Found in the Shonei Gula, which was mentioned at the beginning of Parshas Vayiro, when Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem says to Moshe, tell Klal Yisrael, Votzesi eschem, Veitzalti eschem, Vugalti eschem, Lokachti eschem lilom, Voyisi lochem lelokim. I will take you to me as a nation, and I will be your Elokim. Vidatem ki ani Hashem Elokechem motzi eschem mitach sev Mitzrayim, and you will know that I am the one that took you out from the sufferings of Mitzrayim. So we'd asked the question in the past. We find by the Makos continuously that L'man yedu Mitzrayim kinei Hashem. We find by Kriyas Yamsuf, by emunah Hashem Moshe Avdo. And here it seems to be Lokachti. What's Lokachti corresponding to? This is Kabbalah Torah. And I will take you to me as a people, and then Vidatem ki ani Hashem Elokechem. And then you will know that I am Hashem who took you out from under the servitude, the slavery of Mitzrayim. I mean, it says continuously before. Man yedu Yisrael kinei Hashem, man yedu Mitzrayim kinei Hashem, emunah Hashem Moshe Avdo by Kriyas Yamsuf. And yet, it seems from the fourth expression of Gula, when will you know that I am Hashem, Asher Lokachti eschem meretz Mitzrayim, hamotzi eschem, after Lokachti eschem lilom. Only then you will know. Until then, it's not so simple. You will know. You will know. So what is it about? That's the question we asked in the past. There were real miracles, and the whole value was L'man yedu Yisrael, L'man yedu Mitzrayim, Hashem komodi boretz, I am Hashem, kinei Hashem, continuously. And here it seems from the fourth expression of Gula, when will you know that I am Hashem who took you out from Egypt? Only at Kabbalah Torah. Until then, you're not going to know. Okay? So we'd said in the past, the famous Rambam, Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, the Rambam says that all the nisim that Moshe Rabbeinu had done was for a reason. The man, the Jew, Klal Yisrael needed food. The bear, we needed mayim. Whatever happened, Kriyas Yamsuf, each to destroy the Mitzrayim. That was the main thrust of what it was about. Even though they had multiple nisim, whether it was 50 nisim alayam, 200 nisim, 250 nisim, and it says, Vayimid Hashem Moshe Avdo, that was only a consequence of that. But why did Hashem bring about those miracles? What was it? It was for a reason, to punish the Mitzrayim. We were beneficiaries. So Rambam says anybody whose belief is based on miracles, ain't believable Dofi. Dofi means it's something which is fickle. Why is that? Because if a person wants to contest the authenticity of Torah, you know what he could say? The Moshe Rabbeinu was a greater machashev than Paro. And Moshe misled you all. Torah itself has to be, is nitzchi, is immutable. It's unquestionable, it's the Dvar Hashem. How do we know that Torah is Dvar Hashem, the Rambam writes? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu communicated the Torah to Klal Yisrael, they heard Hashem saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe lech emolem kach v'kach. Go tell them such and such. And we heard Hashem, and then Moshe Rabbeinu said over what Hashem had said to him, to tell over them. As a result of that, who was Moshe? Moshe was the spokesman of Hashem. Hashem had openly chosen Moshe to be a spokesman. As a result of that, going forward, we know that the Dvar Moshe is the Dvar Hashem because Hashem openly chose Moshe to be a spokesman. So although we no longer hear Hashem speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't make a difference. But it's clear that Moshe Rabbeinu was Hashem's spokesman because at Sinai, Hashem openly chose him and told him to tell us, and we heard it, we witnessed this. As a result of that, that's why it's immutable. So when we speak about until now, Man Yetziat Mitzrayim Kinei Hashem, Man Yetziat Yisrael Kinei Hashem, Vayimidu Hashem Moshe Abdo, that's, of course, you believe it. You hear it, you believe it. But is it something which cannot be questioned in the future? Torah itself has to be immutable. It's unquestioned. The authenticity of Torah is absolute. How is it absolute? If somebody could come and say, maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was a greater machashev, he was a greater sorcerer than Paro, so who knows? Maybe not. Maybe it's not the way you say it. But if it's irrefutable fact, it's absolute. Because every Jew at Sinai was prophesied, ponim el ponim, and we openly saw Hashem speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu. And we heard that Aseret Dibros, and Moshe Rabbeinu was chosen to be a spokesman. So when it says over here, when are you going to know that I am Ani Hashem who took you out of Egypt? When are you going to know that? It's only at Sinai. When it says you will know the datem, you're going to know at a level which is irrefutable facts. It's absolute. Until now, of course you know. But it always could be later. Somebody could question. Maybe it's not as you believe it. That's where you saw it. But maybe it was slightly different. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu misled you. At Sinai, it's absolute. And that's the man. They will believe in you forever that you are the Goel and you are the Noisin HaTorah as a result of what? Of the communication which we witnessed between Hashem and Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what we explained in the past. I looked for where I saw it. Paro was the greatest machashev. He was the greatest sorcerer. I mean, it was never, ever found out. Paro himself presented himself as a deity. Why? Because whenever you go down to the Nilos, to the Nile, the water would rise towards him. And the Chazal cited Posuk that he said, I am the serpent of the Nile. I am the Nachash Shiur. Ani Asisoni. I made the Nile. So there's a Balaturim in last week's Parsha to a Moshe Rabbeinu Aaron threw the staff down before Paro. Then it says, Yehi L'sanin. It will become. It doesn't. Vayi, it says Yehi. So the Balaturim says, Hashem says to what he's communicating with the staff before Paro, today you're a living human being. But just as this staff had life and it turned into a piece of wood, you present yourself as the Nachash Shiur, the serpent of the Nile, but ultimately you see that this piece of wood, you're going back to Off of Aver. You're going back to Reem of Soleu. You're going to be food for the worms and the maggots. That's what's going to be the end. That was the symbolism of the staff being a snake and being turned into a piece of wood. Yehi L'sanin. Yehi means you're going to be a tanin. You're going to be the mater. As you're the tanin today and you claim you whatever you are, tomorrow you're going back to be that staff, a piece of wood with no life in it. That's what it is. So it says Paro, he concealed that he had bodily functions. Why? Because he believed, he wanted to convince the people that he was a deity. It was never, ever found out. I mean, how did he keep such a secret? How did he keep it such a secret? It was never found out that he had bodily functions. The only first person who caught him in the act was Moshe Rabbeinu. That Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech HaMaimo, go out to the water when he's doing his bodily functions. And Moshe Rabbeinu caught him in the act. Until that, nobody was able to catch him. How's it possible? So I remember where I saw it. That Paro was such a machashev, was such a sorcerer, he was able to create a certain level of concealment that even the greatest sorcerer wasn't able to discover it. He actually created barrier after barrier after barrier to conceal himself. No machashev, no sorcerer could penetrate all the barriers he created. What happens? All of a sudden Moshe Rabbeinu arrives, catches him in the act. That's what happened. So Moshe was a greater. So how did Paro process that? Evidently, he processed it. That Moshe Rabbeinu was a greater, as great as he was, minimally as great as he was, because nobody was able to catch him, and he caught him. He was able to penetrate to dispel all this sorcery and get to him. So that one of two ways to see it. Either you believe in Hashem, and there's nothing beyond God's ability. That's how Moshe Rabbeinu caught you. Or Moshe Rabbeinu is minimally your equal plus more than you. That's why he caught you. I saw this somewhere. So what I said was this. The Rambam says in Hilchos Torah, anybody whose belief is based on miracles ain't believable in Dofi. Of course, they could say it's something fickle. Why? Because they could say that the Moshe performed the miracles wasn't Hashem, it was Moshe. And Moshe Rabbeinu was a sorcerer, and he was a greater sorcerer than Paro. And he pulled the wool over your eyes. As a result of that's why Kabbalah Torah had to be ponim el ponim. We had to witness it face to face, to see, hear, and witness Hashem speaking directly to Moshe, to choose him to be a spokesman. And therefore, that's L'man Yamin, B'chol Yamin L'olam. They will believe in you forever as a result of Sinai. But why was it necessary? The Siforno says, Klaus, were not worthy. We're not at a level to prophesy ponim el ponim. But they did. Because the only way you could confirm that Torah is the Dvar Hashem is only they have to prophesy at that level. Even though they wanted to establish the authenticity and the irrefutability of Torah and the immutability of Torah. But why? Because since Moshe Rabbeinu caught Paro in the act, evidently there are two ways to see it. Either because he was representing Hashem, or maybe he was a sorcerer. Paro saw it as a sorcerer. Because he didn't believe in Hashem, Paro. As a result of that, when it comes to Sinai, if Moshe Rabbeinu would have never displayed any at all that he was a sorcerer, there's not even the basis to say it, maybe. But now that he did, because he was able to penetrate all these barriers that Paro created, so it could be understood, maybe he's a sorcerer, maybe he's a mechashev. Therefore, Hashem had to bring about Kabbalah Torah that was ponim el ponim. That's what he once had said. A human being, the Mesilas Yesharim speaks about this, is a composite of physical and spiritual. The neshama is spiritual, the body is physical, it's earthy. Because the body itself is earthy, physical, all the tendencies of the body are inclined to what? To everything which is not in sync with Kedusha, with Ruchni, with spirituality. So there's a struggle between the Ruchni, the spiritual, and the physical. It's called, a person has a nefesh bahamis. We have a life source like an animal, animalistic life source, our drives, sexual drive, ego, all that's all rooted in the physicality of the person. It's a struggle. It's like a person, chas v'sholom, is a drug addict. Although after he satisfies his fix, he sees that he destroyed his life. But the moment he has the craving, all of a sudden he has amnesia. All the consequences of that behavior, that addiction, are forgotten. Because when he craves, nothing exists except to satisfy that craving. That's exactly what a human being is. We have cravings, physical cravings. So how do you somehow take control? So we say, Chazal tells, Tavling, that what's the neutralizer? What puts us back on track, returns us to sanity? The Torah. The Torah spiritualizes us. And that somehow minimizes that craving that you can take control of your life. But it's not simple, because we find, the Chaim HaKadosh says, it's only an antidote when you study Lishma. If you don't study Lishma, it's not an antidote. We study Torah, yet simultaneously we still have those same inclinations. Maybe they're minimized, but we still have it. But if it's truly a tavling, if it's the antidote, so evidently, so the Or Chaim HaKadosh, it's only Torah Lishma. When you study Torah Lishma, that's when it's the antidote. So how do you achieve all this? So let's say we're not at that level. So how does it work? How do you take control of your life? So the way I understood it was, we know that how many parts are there to the human body? There's Ramach, Evorim, 248. How many mitzvahs aseh do we have? We have 248 mitzvahs aseh. So on a simple level, you say, at every mitzvah aseh corresponds to one aspect of the body. So when you do the mitzvah, you spiritualize that part of the body. So the mitzvah is a spiritualization process, meaning if you do the mitzvah as you should do the mitzvah, automatically the animal is what takes you in that direction. What about if you take the animal and you spiritualize it? It's no longer the animal. It functions differently. Its inclination becomes redirected, that those abilities are invested in spirituality. Because the mitzvah sanctifies the person, but you realize you need a tremendous amount of sanctification. Until you take a Bronco and you break him, that you could control him, it's not so simple. It takes a tremendous amount of work to change the natural inclination of a human being. The amount of investment of Kedusha to make that change takes a tremendous amount. So I always quote the Chavetz always quotes the Rav Chaim Vital, that he writes that every mitzvah aseh corresponds to a component of the neshama. In the Jewish soul, there are 248 components. When we do a mitzvah, this is Rav Chaim Vital, the mitzvah infuses that component of the neshama with an energy. The neshama corresponds, the ramach components to the neshama. Those ramach correspond to every part of the body. The reason why you can lift your hand, there's a component in the neshama which corresponds to your hand, your heart, your brain, your feet, your intestines. There's a corresponding factor between the neshama and the body. That's the human. Once the neshama leaves the body stops functioning because the soul is no longer there. Because the neshama is the source. So the more you spiritualize, when you fuse the neshama with its energy, with its spiritual sustenance, automatically, how does the neshama interact with the body? That result of that infusion manifests itself in the body itself. That's how the person takes on Kedusha. So the more infusion you have of Kedusha, the animal becomes less animal. And then you become more inclined to Kedusha rather than to the Nefesh Bahamis, to the animal drives. That's how, so we're talking about lapses. We saw we had Sinai. That fact was established, irrefutable fact. But yet we bathed as if it never happened. It's like we had these memory lapses. And then Hashem punishes us, all of a sudden we're back on track. In Eicha, quotes a person in Daniel, that the reason why Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, it says in Eicha, al ozum es Torasi, because we abandoned its Torah. The Gemara talks about it. How do we abandon the Torah? Although it says the three cardinal sins, but the reason why we were susceptible by the three cardinal sins is because we abandoned the Torah, because we would have been sufficiently spiritualized by the Torah. And the Gemara says, how do we abandon the Torah? Because we didn't say Birchas Torah. So the Ran explains, the name of Rabbeinu Yonah, that it was more intellectualism. It wasn't Luminam Naslasos. As a result of that, it didn't have the effect to spiritualize us. Therefore, we succumbed to the three cardinal sins. That's what happened. But it says, the Medrash cites a pasuk in Daniel, they took the Talmud, and they threw it on the ground. What's the Talmud? So the Medrash it says in Yeshua, V'gisvo yom v'loylo. A Jew has an obligation to study Torah continuously, unless he has a legitimate excuse not to study Torah. V'gisvo yom v'loylo. What's yom v'loylo? That's Talmud, according to Medrash. Talmud means continuous. Could you imagine, a person's heart has to beat continuously. If it stops beating for a certain period of time, he's no longer alive. The way you have to be connected to Torah, it's Talmud. And what is that Talmud? What do you have to be connected to? Torah has Talmud. So that since they took the Talmud and they threw it on the ground and they didn't study it as they should study it, therefore the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. And Klal Yisrael is called Talmud. Why is Klal Yisrael called Talmud? Because they are the people who are supposed to be engaging in Torah. So that's the Talmud. So what levels of infusion do you have to have on a continuous basis? You have to be connected to Torah continuously. Only then are you spiritualized sufficiently to be able to take control of the animal. Anything less than that, the animal has the upper hand. And if the animal has the upper hand, as much as you're on this Bronco, as much as strong as you are, if it's not broken, you can't control it. You can't control it. You try to control it, you can't control it. You know you're doing the wrong thing, you just can't control because the desire overtakes you, and once it overtakes you, you're off the cliff. There's a morale. We studied Pirkei Avos, Alan. I'm just activating Alan's memory now. Okay. It says, if you consider three things, Yato Bo Lidei Aveiro. Mayim Boso, Lo Nata Holech, the thing Yato Oslit Nid V'cheshben, Yato Bo Lidei Aveiro. So the morale asks, what to say? Yato Bo Li Aveiro. What's Lidei Aveiro? It will not come to the clutches of Aveiro. So Maral explains, once you're in the clutches of sin, person goes out on a limb, way out on the limb. To get back is not simple. The trick is, don't go out on a limb. Stay close to the trunk and you're secure. If you don't want to go, you don't want to come into the clutches of sin, you consider these three things, you're going to keep your distance. Because once you're at the edge, you're already holding by sin, it's not easy to pull out, to extricate yourself from it. That's how is it? How do we see? We say you don't see the forest from the trees because you're so close you can't see it. When you're holding ready to clutch the sin, you're ready to go off the cliff. But if you're at a distance and you see, then you're able to see what it is. And if you see what it is, then you stay away from it. That's the morale. If you consider these three things. And that's the whole concept of shiur the Torah. We have fences to keep our distance, because if the fence doesn't allow us to come the Aveiro, as a result of that, we're able to maintain control over our lives, not being in the clutches of sin. Also, when you see the tzitzis, you remember the mitzvahs. What does it mean you remember? Even if you don't look at it, if I ask you, do you know what tefillin are about? The moment I ask, of course, instant recall. What's uschartim? When you look at the tzitz, uschartim. So the Chofetz Chaim writes that when you look at the tzitzis, it brings you back to the time that you studied that mitzvah. And it's like, at that time, you're sensing the value of the mitzvah. We're not talking just memory. We remember a lot of things. Memory doesn't necessarily touch us. But when you look at the tzitzis, since the tzitzis themselves represent tired mitzvahs, as it says, the mitzvah tzitzis is shokol keneged taryag. So when you look at the tzitzis, it attaches you to the Torah itself. That's uschartim. Uschartim doesn't mean just memory. It means you remember it as if you studied it. So the Chofetz Chaim says, let's say a person never studied those halachas, never studied it. You can look at the tzitzis from today forever. It's not. It only brings you back to what you studied. So if you never studied it, it's not going to help you any. It's chartem, it's chol mitzvah Hashem elkecha, the mitzvahs that you studied. That's the Chofetz Chaim. It says by the Paro said during the Borod, he says, Hashem atzadik v'ani v'ani arushoyim. He was so shaken up by it, and he says, if it stops, I'll let you out. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, V'yomei ilav Moshe, ketzeisi seir, when I leave the city, Ephros is kapai, I will extend my hand, my palms, El Hashem, hakolas yechdolun. The sounds will cease. V'abord lo yehod. It's a different terminology. Regarding kol, it says yechdolun. The sounds mean the thunder will stop, will cease. the borod will no longer be. It should say the same thing. Doesn't say that. It says aborod yachtolun, vaborod lo ye'od, and the hail will no longer be. Right? So if you take a look at the Balaturim, there. Borod lo ye'od, avolo omar avakos lo yu. It doesn't say regarding the coast, it's not going to be any longer. Why? Ki yu b'matan Torah. What happened during Matan Torah? It says there were kolos broken. So the kolos that they heard in Egypt, those kolos right now are going to stop, but they're going to continue. Where? At Sinai. At Sinai, the kolos are going to continue. Borod is what? Lo yod. The borod is not going to be any longer. That borod is not going to be. But kolos is going to be within a certain proximity of time. After leaving Egypt, 50 days later, we're going to hear those kolos again. That's lo yu. Yachtolun, they're going to stop now. Are they going to be not going to be again? No, they're going to be borod lo ye'od. They're not going to be any longer. Okay? So now, there's a medrash over here, Medrash Tanchuma, that the borod, it says in the medrash, stopped in midair. It was coming down. We're talking about like meteorites of ice coming down. And when Moshe was mispalel, the ice just stopped in midair. When did they come down again? So the medrash says that we fought the Amoraim, where we conquered Canaan. The hail, these stones, these meteorites that were midair came down and destroyed the Amoraim. Losid Lovo, Mechemes Gog Magog. Mechemes Gog Magog, the ice, these meteorites are going to come down and destroy Mechemes Gog Magog. Could you imagine a meteorite hitting the earth? They're always worried it can destroy the earth. They're so big, these meteorites. And Gog Magog, Mechemes Gog Magog, these meteorites are going to come down of ice to destroy Gog Magog. So when it says Lo Ye'od, Od means within the realm of human existence. At the end of time, when Gog and Magog come to an end, that's when this border is coming back. It's going to fall. Right now, it's all animated suspension. That's the medrash. You take a look. Okay? There's an Orach Chaim HaKodesh at the beginning of Parshas Bo, when we speak about the locust, the arbe. Record this.
So that in and of itself is a miracle.
That's what I'm saying. The Orach Chaim is Kodesh. I'm just embellishing the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Oh, Shemeno held, something we're wasting our time here.
Right.
Because evidently, you see what the man is made of. What's the point? Hashem says he's not made of anything. That he's able to withstand this, it's me. I'm the one who did it. So it's just explained that itself is the miracle.
And why is it?
It's not I took away his bechira. That he's able to survive, that itself is the miracle. Till now with the Rambam, he took away his bechira. There's more than take away his bechira. He should have been pulverized. He should have been destroyed. He should have had a meltdown 1,000 times over.
Mm-hmm.
How does he survive it? Why is slave
avodah, Rabbi? Why do we have to? Why is that?
We'll see in a moment. What did his avodah say to him? They said to him, something, let's reconsider. Because before we turn around, something, Egypt's gone. You don't want Egypt in history. So maybe you should be a little attentive. But then afterwards, he put it out to us. He says, who's going? Moshe Rabbeinu says, we're all packing out of here. We, the children, our herds, our flocks, and you're going to give us also on top of it. They said, if that's the case, you're not going. So even here, he retracted. But initially, why did he even consider it? Because the Avodim, his inner circle, said, look, Paro, we're your advisors. What do we want to tell you is in your best interest? So Paro says, I'm going to show you it's not in our best interest. Because if they go on in that context, they're not coming back. Therefore, I'm not letting them go. We'll discuss that point. There's an expression, many years ago, certain people, when they started to learn Gemara, they said to me, Rabbi, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So I said, it makes sense. You don't understand. It takes time to understand, right? Paro said, his Avon says, doesn't make sense. Before you turn around, there's no longer Egypt. He says, you people don't understand. I'm going to explain to you and I'm going to show you that their intention is not to go a short stop out and come back. They're not coming back. And if they don't come back, for all intents and purposes, Egypt is history. The financial backbone of Egypt is the slaves, the Jewish slaves. So what you're telling me, I should throw in the towel because otherwise there's nothing left. There's nothing left either case because they're not coming back. So he explained to his avodim, to his inner circle, that this whole thing is a ploy. That's all it is, nothing more than that.
The Rav just said that the Makos, the Barad is the worst plague there was, but isn't Makos Bechoros? Wasn't that the worst plague? Why
I
was
said till now.
oh, up till now the worst
It was
plague?
a different thing. It was different. Max Machoris was a different plague. This was trauma. This was traumatizing. Max Machoris was an eye-opener. Eye-opener means everybody's dying. It's not trauma. Here, the noise, the devastation, a person can lose his mind just from, when a person dies, a person, God forbid, in an accident, he dies of internal injuries. What's the injury? The internal injury means because the impact is so strong that the inner organs, they actually detach themselves. Even though he's not hit, it's the impact is so violent. So very often the person, when he's killed with a bomb, person's on the battlefield. When a bomb explodes, the earth sometimes shakes to such a degree, or the sound is so loud, sometimes people, they lose the hearing. The eardrum can't tolerate that level of noise. The earth shakes and quakes to such a degree, the person dies just from the quaking. Just from the quaking. The person's not hit by the shrapnel of the bomb. This is what Borod was. They should have been devastated. They weren't devastated. It's interesting. Not only was Paro not devastated, evidently the population wasn't devastated. How did the population survive it? Right? Because the population, clearly, they borrowed their personal effects and this and that. And then afterwards, they chased them. How did they chase? Paro, maybe Hashem hardened his heart. And he could survive it. What about the rest of them? So evidently, Hashem protected all the Egyptians. That even though there was a borod and they all experienced this, exposed to this trauma, this level of noise and everything else, yet they were fully functional afterwards. That they were able to chase us. Now, you don't think about this. Think about Paro, his inner circle. No, the whole population was actually protected. Okay. The Gemara tells